Kako učinkovito učiti jezike?
¿Cómo aprender idiomas de forma
Hur
eficaz?
man lär sig språk
How
effektivt.
to learn languages effectively.
Last summer, when I was alone in Tallinn, Estonia, I had to face a challenge. This challenge was this simple phrase, and many others like it, tere tulemast. I presume none of you speak Estonian?
Hey, don't look at me. Learning a new language can be challenging, especially if you don't know the language. We just saw presenter Matthias Pillin talking about his experience traveling to a new country and not being able to speak the language. I bet many of you can relate to this. I know I can. The language that he was speaking is Estonian. Estonian is spoken in the small country of Estonia. And while it's the second largest Finnic language, most people don't speak Estonian.
How can one learn a language in a very limited amount of time, comprehend it, be able to act with it, be able to work with it, to meet people with it, and most of all, to progress in it?
Well, that's a great question. How can you learn a language in a very limited amount of time? Is there some super method?
If you were thinking that there is some magical way, some magical secret, which he told me, I have to disappoint you. There is no single super method. If the polyglots, all of them worldwide, agree on one thing, it is that there is no way, one fastest way how to learn a language.
Well, there you have it. As the speaker admits, there is no super method to learning a new language. I'm sorry to say that there's no magical way to learn a new language, but let's talk about some strategies that can help make it a little easier.
This sentence is in Estonian. Let me read it. Koikenemised sunnivad vabodena ja võrdsetena oma verkuselt ja augustelt.
Did you catch that? Yeah, probably not. But let's look closer at this Estonian phrase. Look at the word ja. We see that it is repeated in this sentence, so it's most likely a commonly used word, like and, of, it, or something like that. By looking at the other words, we notice that there's a couple of words with the same ending. Both sets of words with the same ending have the word ja in the middle of them. This gives us a hint at what that word might be. If we are grouping those two sets of words, what word do we use to group different sets together? And, right? So it makes this easy to come to the conclusion that this word is and. Wow, we just learned a new word in a completely different language that we've never even seen before. By looking at language logically, you can understand it from the inside out. And if you're curious, this phrase translates to say, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights.
This is how you learn language. Once you find the meaning, the message behind a sentence, you're able to acquire the language. There are signifiers in a language, which all help you to build the logical structure of this said language.
Understanding the structure behind the language makes it easier to understand the language itself. In order to fully grasp a language, you need to really enjoy it and want to learn it. It has to be important to you in some way. Maybe it helps with education, your job, communication with family and friends, or it's just useful when traveling.
Languages are tools. Just like any other part of our lives, they can be used in some meaningful way. Once you find what this meaningful way is, you're able to learn much faster and, therefore, choose a language that's useful to you.
You can't just sit back and hope that you'll eventually understand the language somehow, but you must immerse yourself in the language. When most people think about immersion, they think that they must visit the country that speaks the language that they want to learn. This isn't actually true. I've actually helped many students become immersed in the language because it is so helpful to learning a language effectively. I won't get into all of that today, But you can use things around you to immerse yourself in the language. If you want to learn a new language, you need to surround yourself with that language. If you want to learn English, you should listen to music in English. You should read books in English. You should watch shows and movies in English. You should speak in English as much as possible. The speaker also suggests that you find a parent speaker or someone who knows more of the language than you do to help guide you along your learning journey. They will correct your language and help guide you in the right direction.
What you need is a parent speaker, somebody that will speak to you on the same level, will help you learn new words, and will actually correct you, will actually give you advice how to speak better, and will not diminish you in any sort of way. That is key, because when you're able to practice your speaking, your learning in that sense, you learn faster.
When you are able to observe and listen to other speakers, you're able to better understand what they're trying to communicate. I can totally relate to this. I used to work with a group of people whose native tongue was Arabic. I used to watch them when they would speak and the hand motions and the way that their mouths would move and the words that they would say when they talked about certain things. And I started to pick up on the language a little bit. I'm not fluent by any means, but I started understanding what they were trying to say. And I remember them being so shocked when I started responding to them in English, of course, but responding to things that they would say because I was understanding how they were communicating. By watching people, observing what they're doing, you can learn a lot. And this is so helpful when trying to learn a new language. Body language says a lot. Put it together with spoken language, and that's how you become fluent.
We're forced to stuff our heads with words that don't bear any meaning and that we'll never probably use ever in our lives. Yet we don't actually focus on comprehending them, to comprehending the structures in the sentences, to actually using our existing knowledge from other languages, from our maternal tongues, to actually progress further.
There are parts of this statement that I agree with and disagree with. I think one of the most common misconceptions that people have are that you need to know how to speak the language perfectly to be able to use it. I completely understand this feeling, as I've felt this way before myself. I get nervous to speak to other speakers in Spanish, especially if they're native speakers, because it's embarrassing to be wrong. But honestly, most people can tell that you're not a native speaker. As long as you try to communicate to them, especially if you're using their native tongue, most people are very understanding and kind about it. But I do think it's also important to focus on vocabulary and parts of the language that will help you communicate better. You can always perfect it later. All right, so in conclusion, let's talk about what we learned. Understanding a language logically helps you to translate that understanding into learning a new language. It's important to find your reason for learning the language, as it's important to have some sort of passion or reason so that you have motivation to learn the language. It's important to immerse yourself into the language and watch other people's body language and the way that they speak to learn how they communicate. Remember not to judge yourself too harshly when learning a new language, but to learn some new key vocabulary and phrases that will help you communicate more effectively. Okay, that's it for today. I will see you next time. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't. See you next time.